So I see you guys are practicing your guitar. Well, come here for a second. You, with your 100-watt half stack in your living room, cranked all the way to 1. Why? Because your wife's going to kick you out of the house if you crank it any louder? And you, the one that's bought into all the marketing hype that says modelers are better than the amps that they're modeling. Why? Because your amp's too heavy? You know, it's quite possible that your practice amp setup sucks. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. Why don't you join me? There's me getting into trouble again. Listen, I love tone and I love talking about it. Now, I'm mainly talking to you guys with those big tube amps and you can never crank it past a whisper. Now, imagine you got to drive a Ferrari and they said you can't drive it more than 10 miles an hour. That would be quite the shame now, wouldn't it? Now, your amplifier is a thoroughbred and you got to let it out of the stable sometimes. Now, if you're familiar with the Torpedo Captor X, you might think of it as a recording tool, but actually it has a lot of different functions and it can help set up what I think is the ultimate practice amp rig. So I'm going to show you a couple of features that are going to help you convert that big old amp into something that you can actually use all the time. By the way, if you've been living under a rock, the Captor X is a reactive load box that allows you to operate your tube amp safely without a speaker cabinet and converts the signal to a line level for use in direct recording or for one of the great practice amp options I'll be demonstrating shortly. It can also load 2Notes' proprietary cab sims as well as any third-party cab IRs. And it's also an attenuator. I'll be digging into that feature shortly. Now, if you're earlier in your journey and you're contemplating going from, let's say, a small practice amp, or maybe you got some kind of digital device and you're thinking either an amp or a modeler. Now, modeling emulates real amplifiers. And to me, that classic relationship between the player, the guitar, and the amplifier, it's just so iconic and so integral in shaping tone, because really, what is tone? I look at it as a chain reaction that's conceived up here, it's created with these, it's translated with one of these, it's amplified over here, and then it's distributed somewhere down here. Now, the speaker cabinet tends to be the bottleneck, especially in a practice amp situation, because if you're in an environment where you just can't crank it, well, what's the point? Well, the Torpedo Captor X is going to give you something that's going to feel familiar, especially if you're coming from the digital world, where the cabinets are all going to be in the digital realm, and you can shape them and change them just like you would in a modeling system. But that origin of tone is happening with a real amplifier, and I think that is the ultimate practice amp experience. It certainly has other uses too, and that Torpedo Captor X is going to grow with you if you get into recording and live and things like that down the road. So I'm going to take a look at two features that are really going to take your amp and make it the ultimate practice amp. We're talking attenuation and a headphone out on a tube amp. Who knew? Let's take a look. The Captor X can be set up as an attenuator, or you can set it up using the headphone out. Now, the setup is going to be slightly different. Both are super easy, but let me walk you through that so you can see how you'd set up your amp. When using the Captor X as an attenuator, the setup is really simple. I'd recommend doing this with your amp off, at least for the first time. Start by taking your standard speaker cable that you normally use with your amp and cabinet, but connect it from your amp speaker output into the Captor speaker input. Then take a second speaker cable and connect it to your cab. The Captor has 3 attenuation settings from low to full. Low will give you an attenuation of minus 38 dB. You can crank your amp to 10 and still sit comfortably beside it. My amp is completely cranked, and I can still have a conversation with you. The middle setting gives you an attenuation of minus 20 dB for when you can handle a little more volume, but still want to tame your loud amp. And the full setting is no attenuation at all, as I found out the hard way. Holy shit! I'd recommend starting at low volumes and then ease into cranking it up so you become comfortable with the different attenuation settings. The obvious benefits of this setup is you can find your amp's sweet spot, which more often than not will be at louder volumes, but will allow you to control the output. The minus 20 dB setting is great for jamming or even gigs in smaller venues, so it will open up the number of uses for your loud amplifier. But for practicing, both settings will allow you to dial into your amp's sweet spot, giving you the best tone your amp has to offer while controlling your volume, and that makes practicing so much more enjoyable. This next setup is going to allow you to use your old tube amp with headphones. And trust me, it's a truly immersive experience, and it's a virtually silent solution for everyone else in your space. Much like the previous setup, you can patch your amp into the speaker in on the Captor X. While you can't keep the attenuator setup in place at the same time, you'll need to disconnect the cabinet if you want a silent solution. Then plug your favorite headphones into the 1/4-inch headphone jack on the front panel. Again, I'd recommend turning down your amp before you start playing until you get comfortable with the settings. The Captor X comes preloaded with 6 full setups that include DynIr cabinets, mics, reverbs, and all of the tone shaping tools you need. This is fully customizable. You control the volume with the output dial. The voicing dial allows you to adjust your mid-range to find the right balance, and the space knob gives you control over your room effects and lets you adjust the width of the stereo field. Now, I don't know if I need to check my enthusiasm because this is not actually a paid review. I do use the Captor X, and just having the experience of hearing your amp in headphones is truly incredible. And we can crank this experience up another level because the Captor X has built-in Bluetooth, which lets you connect to your smartphone or your tablet and gives you access to the Torpedo Remote application, which gives you the ability to edit all the different parameters of your presets. Remember those 6 presets on the preset dial? You can see the presets changing in real time in the app. And now you can dig into these settings to create your own setups. You can save up to 128 different presets. The first 6 are the ones available on the dial. It all starts with the DynIr cabinets. These are 3-dimensional cab IRs that allow you to move the placement of the microphones. You can even place the mic at the back of the cabinet. You can blend 2 different mic positions and even change your microphones. On top of that, you have a highly customizable reverb and numerous other tone shaping tools. The Captor X comes loaded with some great cabs, and there are a ton more available in the 2-Note store. I'm just scratching the surface here, but I'm sure this gives you an idea. If you've got a tube amp or you're thinking of getting a tube amp, this is a wonderful way to practice. You're going to get to utilize the amp the way it was designed and really immerse yourself in just some incredible tones. And I think if you're truly inspired, it's going to push you harder to practice more and more because you're going to be enjoying yourself all the way through. And it's super easy. You don't even need a computer to set it up. I mean, why get a second amplifier when you can use your main amp and just use a Captor X just to bring that practice experience to you, and you can use it all the time. There's no more excuses, right? Because nobody is going to hear you. You might lose a little bit in portability, but if the goal is to use your existing amplifier, then the Captor X is an awesome solution. Well, there's my take on the best practice amp setup. Would love to know your thoughts on that. That's what the comment section is for. If you did like this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that bell. If you want to do a deeper dive with me, I'm on Patreon. I have affiliate links. I even have merch. All that's linked down below. But the most important thing is to check out another video. I've got one waiting for you right here. And remember, you don't need a band to rock and roll. And I look forward to seeing you again in another video.